there's a number of folks who are interested but can't make it, and we're recording it for them. We're gonna kind of, we kind of set the stage and kick things off, we're actually gonna do a little poll here before we do anything else. So I'm gonna launch a poll. I would love for you to take a minute to chime in on a couple questions. Kind of slowly answering. You guys are thinking
That
hard on
took
this.
all my brain power. I'm not sure how much else I can give you today.
Ooh, that first question, a lot of reading there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a good note, Megan. That is a lot of reading if I'm trying to do a quick poll in a Zoom meeting.
It's okay.
Good,
it was
good
great.
note. All right, we didn't get everybody, but I'm going to go ahead and end this here. We'll share the results. I've got some ringers in the crowd. Yes, the answer to that number one, students perceive the class as laid back and low pressure. That has not been identified as a characteristic the others have of classes that faculty and students both think are great FYS classes. Very good. Our confidence level on Zoom is not too bad, actually. So that's good. We're here to learn a little bit more, gain a little bit more confidence. This is good. Great. All right. Well, a couple kind of quick housekeeping things. I think we're used to these, but I want to mention a few. Please try to remember to mute when you're not talking. I encourage you to, if you have a question anytime, this is going to be kind of a long conversation, feel free to use the raise your hand feature in the participant list, and I'd encourage you to scroll down, if you haven't, to the bottom menu bar and have your participant list and chat board up, so that those can be active throughout the time. It's a place where we can do a lot of nonverbal things. But please feel free to use your hand raise feature or the chat board to ask a question anytime, and we can call on you, or you can just type it in there. Co-hosting with Jason Gomory and Matt Farmer. Actually, they're doing all the heavy lifting. I'm just getting the glory by starting off. But those of us who aren't talking will try to answer those questions in the chat board as we continue. I want to give you a little bit of context for this session and the summer, the FYS sessions in general. First, there's more folks on this call. There's about 30 of us. There are more people on this call than are teaching FYS online or in a hybrid format. So that tells me that we all know this technology is just part of the air we breathe now. And we also have question marks on maybe we're going to need to use it more than we're planning on, because there's quite a number of folks who wanted to be here that couldn't as well. I also wanted to say, because I've been asked by a few folks, is HOPE or is FYS like officially endorsing Zoom over other technologies? Yes and no. HOPE will be HOPE and CIT will be supporting Google Meet and Zoom. But HOPE did purchase, if you hadn't heard, like a corporate license for Zoom, so anyone can get a licensed account that has more features and doesn't have the time restrictions. So in that sense, there is some official endorsement for Zoom. If you don't have a licensed account and you think you're going to be
just remembered I can put on headphones if this bugs you, so let me know.
If you want that account, if you want that license account, you just have to ask for like a CIT work order.
All right, good.
What else? Oh, the other thing I wanted to know. So today is kind of just about technology primarily. So we have 3 other FYS sessions this summer. On Thursday, we're going to be kind of doing some background stuff, FYS objectives. Next week, we have a session on leading discussions. We have another session on academic advising. But today is really going to be focused on using Zoom because that's been kind of an area of interest and anxiety for many folks. And we'll kind of link that to teaching strategies and pedagogy kind of in the second half of our session. But today really is a little bit more like technology. And our agenda is, it's fairly simple. The first half of today is gonna be like Zoom 101. Here's how it works. Here's the basics. Then we'll take a break and then we'll come back and we'll do some more advanced features, as well as kind of talk about how some of those features relate to some teaching strategies you might consider. So that's kind of where we're going. But for those of you who know me, you may give me an eye roll or you may be like delighted. But for those of you who know me, you know that I almost always, anytime I'm teaching or in charge of facilitating anything, try to start with like a meditation or some moment to like bring us to the moment. So we're gonna do that now because there's so many things we could be thinking about. We probably are thinking about so many things at Hope, in the world, in our own lives. And this meditation, I don't think all of life needs to revolve around us individually, but this meditation is really going to be kind of about you and your experience of now in this moment. So we'll start it in a second. We haven't started yet. First, I'm going to ask you to think of something, and then we're actually going to start the meditation, okay? What I want you to think of, for just take a second to think, I want you to think about something that's maybe emotional or spiritual. Think about something you really need, like today. Maybe you think of things like fruit of the spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, maybe other things, maybe hope, maybe energy. Just kind of think for a second. We haven't really started the meditation, but just think something you need. We're going to come back to that thing. And now I'm going to invite you to, and you might even want to mute your video. You don't need to, but sometimes people feel a little bit more comfortable. I want you to get into, not quite the cliche to get comfortable. I actually want you to get comfortable but attentive. So if you're in a chair, I want you to like scoot your back up into the back of the chair. I want you to get your feet on the ground and kind of be attentive. So that you feel attentive but comfortable. So go ahead and get into that position. And I would like you, if you're comfortable with it, to close your eyes. And I want you to breathe normally, but I want you to simply try to notice the act of your own breathing. See if you can actually feel the air moving in and out of your nose or mouth. Just pay attention to it. Notice the rising and falling of your chest as you breathe. And now I want you to bring to mind that word or phrase or idea, that thing you need that you thought of earlier. Bring it to the front of your mind. And I want you to imagine that with each intake of breath, you are breathing in that word, the essence of that word. Breathe in that word and breathe out your anxieties. Take a few more normal breaths, then we'll return to our session. And thank you. And as a reminder, would love if you're comfortable to have your video on, just so we can all see one another in that tile view. Thanks for indulging that meditation. I just think it's helpful to try to be as fully present as we can whenever we're together. All right, I took more time as usual than I was allotted, but it's my great pleasure to introduce one of our all-star alums, who is now also a staff member, Jason Gomory, relatively recent graduate of Hope, former student body president. Many of you have talked with him or seen him around in a variety of capacities. He's serving in a couple capacities right now at Hope. He works in the Office of Admissions. He's also part of our first year transitions team, which is made up of folks from all across campus who are helping the communication and pre-orientation gatherings virtually throughout the summer for incoming students and families. And he also is one of like 2 or 3 of our Zoom experts on campus who has been behind the scenes facilitating the technology of our kind of campus-wide Zoom gatherings. So when you see those, he's one of the folks leading those. So take it away, Jason. It's good to have you.
Good morning, everyone. It is so great to see a lot of familiar faces. I'm excited to be here with you all this morning, and thanking Ryan for inviting me to be a part of it. This morning, I am hoping to give a Zoom 101. So it's not a Zoom 300 level course, it's Zoom 101. It'll be just below the surface level of what I think is a good foundation for all of you to be successful in the classroom. So we will talk a little bit about some things that you want to think about before you begin. We will talk about setting up a meeting and some best practices while you're setting up those meetings within the Zoom web portal. And then we'll also talk about some features when you're actually hosting a Zoom meeting yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. So this morning, I want to talk about a few different things that you should think about before you actually dive into hosting your first Zoom meeting. One of those things being updating your default settings. So within your, a few things that you want to think about before you even get there. So everyone looked really great this morning. They had a great lighting, a nice neutral background. Most I saw had their camera at eye level. But some things that you want to be really intentional about before you get started is thinking about your physical space, what your background looks like, how much light you have. I'm probably not doing the best job at being an example of this right now, but you want to avoid a lot of strong light from your background and more light coming towards your face from behind your camera. And then you also want to think about camera angle. Right now, I have my laptop propped up on a stand so that my camera is eye level, and so I can look directly into that camera. You want to avoid having your laptop on your table, so it's an up angle or even a down angle, because that can become distracting. It gives off the feeling that you are actually on a screen rather than trying to emulate that in-person experience as much as possible. So you want to bring that camera to eye level. There are laptop stands out there that you could buy, or you could just prop it up on some books or board games or whatever you have around the house. Thinking about physical space and also just thinking about yourself talking into that camera, you want to be able to look directly into that lens. Studies have shown that if you look directly into the lens, that is going to give off you looking directly into someone's eyes as best as possible that we can do in a virtual world. Hosting a lot of different events over the past couple of months, my trick to whoever is on my panel or whoever is in the presentation is putting a little sticky note or a camera, or I mean, not a camera, a picture of a family or friend or dog or pet, and sticking that up by your camera. That will allow you to look at the picture rather than into the lens, which can be intimidating for a lot of people. I've heard great feedback about it. It brings a level of comfort. It just eases you a little bit better than staring into a camera, which can make us kind of clam up or be a little bit nervous. So just think about some little things that you could put up there that make you more comfortable. Technology-wise, some things that would really help make it a better experience is investing or getting from CIT some sort of headphones or microphone or a headset that has both included. I see a lot of people wearing them this morning. It will allow you to hear better, and it will allow you to give off a better sound quality and pick up less background noise in the background. And then if you do prop your laptop up, you'll want to think about having an external mouse and keyboard that you can use while you're presenting or while you're in class with students. And then before you actually start hosting your first meeting or scheduling first meeting, you're going to want to update your default settings. And before I go any further, I do want to mention that I have put together kind of a Zoom 101 booklet with all of the information that I'm going to talk about this morning. So it has step-by-step details about the settings that you should turn on, how to schedule a meeting, how to share those links out, all the features that you have during the meeting. So don't worry too much about taking notes. We'll share this out at the end for you to have and share with your colleagues if you'd like as well. So what you'll want to do, and this is the first section of that Zoom 101 booklet that I put together, is you're going to want to update your default settings in your web portal. Now, in a minute, I'll explain the difference between your web portal and your desktop client, but your web portal is essentially the zoom.us that you would type into your browser on your computer, whether that's Chrome, Safari, Firefox. That is your web portal. So when you hear me refer to the web portal, it's the one that's in your browser. Once you log in, on the left-hand side, you'll see settings. If you click on that, it will bring up all of your advanced settings within your web portal. And on that document that we'll share out, it has all of the settings that you want to turn on. Now, these are just recommended, so don't feel like you have to stick through these. These are the settings that I will have turned on, though, for my presentation this morning. So all of the features that I'm talking about, I have these settings on in the background. Now you can tweak these, you can enable other settings. It's your personal preference for how you want to teach, but these are just some of the recommended settings that you'll want to change. So I talked a little bit about web portal and desktop client. So your web portal, like I mentioned, is the zoom.us, and /sign-in will get you directly to the login page. Now this is the place where you can land to either start an account if you don't have one already. You can either sign up for free, or you can use the sign in with Google. Sign in with Google will allow you to use the same username and password that you use for your One Hope account with Hope, so you don't have to remember another password. But if you'd like to change and have a different password from your email for your Zoom account, just click sign up for free. We'll be working in the web portal for scheduling our meetings. And then we will be working in the desktop client for hosting our meetings. So the desktop client is the Zoom application that you'll download onto whatever device you're using. Some will be an iPad, most will probably be a laptop, but you'll actually download this application onto your computer. Now this application, unbeknownst to many, often runs in the background and is actually initiated by you clicking on a Zoom link. So if you clicked on the Zoom link through the calendar invite this morning, that opened up a new tab in your browser, most likely, and it initiated your Zoom desktop client. So the Zoom desktop client is what Zoom uses to host the meeting locally on your computer. Matt Farmer, when we were talking yesterday, he encouraged people to add this to your taskbar at the bottom of your screen for easy access. It will make your life easier when you're presenting and teaching, and I'm sure he'll talk a little bit more about that later. So now I want to talk a little bit about scheduling a meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over to my web portal. So right now I'm at zoom.us. If you type in zoom.com, it will bring you here as well. And this is where you'll want to go to log into your Zoom account and schedule all of your meetings. I encourage everyone to use the web portal to schedule meetings. It is a little bit easier to use, a little bit more intuitive than using the desktop client to schedule meetings. So I would encourage you to come to your Zoom portal or your web portal to schedule a meeting. So you will sign in. For the instances of this presentation, I'm going to be using sign in with Google. So I'm clicking on my admissions account and it automatically logs me in. So this is the main page for the web portal. You'll see along the left-hand side a toolbar that you can use to access your meetings, different settings in your main profile. On your profile, I would recommend updating your profile picture. That's what shows in the participants panel, and when your video is not presenting, it's really nice to have some sort of logo or picture there. And then just make sure your name is spelled correctly, because this will be the default name that shows up whenever you join a meeting. So a lot of people right now have just last names. So for my instance, it would just be Gomory. And that can be a little confusing when you're joining a meeting for your host to know who to let into the room. But to schedule a meeting, so you're gonna come over to the left-hand side and click on meetings. And you'll click on the big blue schedule a new meeting button. Now, I'm going to set up a meeting how I would recommend you setting up a meeting for your class or office hours. So we're gonna set up our meeting in a way that will allow us to set a recurring meeting so that you have one link for students to join into for every class session and or if they wanna access your office hours. So you're gonna put in a topic or a description. Description is not necessary, but topic is. So I'm going to title it the title of my FYS when I was a freshman at Hope, Make Your Mark by Professor Schoonveld. You can ignore description and using a template if you'd like. The biggest thing is going to be in this when duration time zone. So the easiest way for you to set up a Zoom link for your class is to set a recurring meeting. So if you click on recurring meeting and then you change recurrence to no fixed time, this will, when we save our meeting, it will create a Zoom link that can be used over and over again and a Zoom meeting that you can start over and over again on your end. So I'd recommend setting a recurring meeting for your classes. And if you wanted to schedule an office hour on Zoom virtually, you could just change this topic to office hours, set a recurring meeting, and post that link on your syllabi and on your portals in Moodle for students to join in your office hours when you're hosting them. Meeting ID, I keep generate automatically. Always require a meeting password. I really want to stress this. When the world transitioned to online learning in March, a lot of people were not using the meeting password. This is what secures your Zoom room and avoids what is known as Zoom bombing. So people joining into your meetings unannounced. So always put a meeting password on. I typically just turn on the video for host and participant. This is just a default setting, so it will automatically ask your participants to start their video when they're joining your calls. If you leave them off, people can still turn on their video and turn off their video. I always give the people the option to either call in for audio or connect through their Wi-Fi for their computer audio, so leave it on both. And then the meeting options is where you'll want to pay particular attention to. And again, I have these written down step by step in that Zoom 101 booklet. I would always recommend to enable join before host to leave that off. If you turn that on, people can join into your Zoom meeting before you get there. You may turn this on, say if you have back-to-back classes, to allow students to congregate before you join in if you'd like. I'm not a professor, but I think it is nice to just have some control over when and who is joining your meeting. So I would recommend keeping this off. Always turn on mute participants upon entry. This will avoid unnecessary background noise, especially as students join in, depending on their setting. I always enable waiting room. We'll talk about this feature a little bit when I talk about hosting a meeting, but the waiting room will allow you to control the flow of who is coming in and out of your classroom. This will be especially nice if you want some time to prepare before students actually join into the meeting. If you have a presentation that you want to start up before they actually join with a welcome screen, and or if you have guest presenters joining you for your class, it might be nice for you to touch base with that guest presenter or get your presentation ready and going before actually letting students in. It's kind of like opening the door to your classroom. Leave only authenticated users can join off. This will restrict people to having a Zoom account. That may impact accessibility, especially if a student's not logged in correctly to their Zoom account. And then the last two, breakout rooms and recording, these would be optional. So if you are wanting to use breakout rooms during the classroom, I'd click it on. You don't have to worry too much about creating the rooms now. You can pre-assign students to breakout rooms. You can also create the breakout rooms in advance. So if you know you want 4 rooms that you're going to split students up to, this will make it a little bit easier when you're actually going to host a breakout room, and we'll talk more about that later. And then if you want to record the meeting automatically, I have numerous times forgot to turn on the recording in a meeting. So this is a good safety net. If you click it, as soon as the second person joins your Zoom meeting, it will start a recording. I would encourage you, and this will be an option for everyone once they get a licensed account, to record in the cloud. It will take less bandwidth on your computer while you're actually in the Zoom meeting. So if you've ever been in a meeting and you hear your fan running on your computer, that's when your computer is being overloaded. So if you record it to the cloud, it will record into Zoom's servers, and then you'll be able to access it through the Zoom portal, the Zoom web portal, after the actual meeting. If you record it to the cloud, it's a little bit easier to share out after the fact. If you record it on your computer, you most likely will then have to upload this to your Google Drive and then share it out, which can just become a little bit cumbersome, especially if your Wi-Fi speed isn't that fast. So I would recommend always recording in the cloud. And then the last thing you'll always want to do is make sure to click Save. So that will create your meeting. Now, 2 things once you've created your meeting. This is a saved meeting that we just saved. So if you go back to My Meetings and we wanted to get back into that meeting, you just click right here on the name of the meeting that you scheduled. Now you'll see you can add it directly to your Google Calendar if you'd like, but because it's a recurring meeting, it will be a little confused about when and what time to add it. But the most important thing is going to be this invite link. This link, and you'll notice our password is already embedded in this link. If you share this link with your students, they will be able to click on this and join automatically into your meeting without the meeting ID and without the password. So this is the link that you're going to want to post on your syllabi, post on your Moodle pages, post wherever you can, or share it out in email as much as possible so that they have no excuses of where the link was. And then once they click on this, it will open up the Zoom meeting automatically for them and join into your session. Now, again, because we set up a recurring meeting, this link can be shared multiple times for the same class. So they'll click on this same link every time they're going to join a session for your class, whenever your scheduled sessions are. This is just a summary of the settings that we just set. And then at the very bottom is actually where you can add on polling questions. So similar to how Ryan asked a poll question at the beginning, you can add the poll questions before you actually begin the class. Now, something to know, because we set up a recurring meeting, you'll want to come in here and prepare your poll questions for each session. So your poll questions will remain in here until you edit them out. I always encourage you to set up your poll questions beforehand. If you want to ask a question on the fly within your meeting, you can add them during the meeting, but always try to be prepared in adding those poll questions. So you'll click add, and you'll have the ability to add as many polls as you want. You can ask questions concurrently. So if I wanted to ask 2 questions right off the bat, like we did this morning, you would just click add question and then save the poll. You can allow students to answer anonymously, and you can allow students to select multiple choices from their answer options. If you wanted to add a couple polls, you can. So if we just wanted to add a test poll here, it will save one test or one poll, and then you can add another. And I'll show when we're actually activating the poll in a meeting what that looks like and how to select the right one. So just 2 things. Remember to set a recurring meeting, and then remember this is the link that you want to share out, and only this hyperlink. If you click on copy invitation, it will give you the full invitation, and it has the join Zoom meeting link embedded into it. But it's just easier if you copy and paste this link and share it out with your students. Before I transition into actually hosting a meeting and talking about some different features there, are there any questions about scheduling meetings, sharing the link, adding poll questions, or anything I've covered so far?
Yes. And this might be a little later because you said you were going to go into the breakout rooms a little later. So I don't know if you want this question now, but when you say going into breakout rooms, I tried assigning breakout rooms beforehand. So I could already put people in groups, but it wouldn't accept our .edu extensions. But when I did it at the time, if they're already there, I can separate them out, but not ahead of time.
Yeah, that is a great point. I don't know if CIT has figured out that just yet. It might be different if all students and faculty have a licensed account through our HOPE higher ed account through Zoom. So that may change come this fall once they kind of onboard everyone into Zoom. But there is some trouble with assigning breakout rooms, pre-assigning breakout rooms. I like to at least set up the room. So if I know I'm going to have 14 rooms, it takes one step out of having to do that mid-meeting so that there are 14 rooms already ready to go. But the pre-assigning, I have had trouble with that before.
Annie, you're on mute.
I think we're still having trouble hearing you, Annie.
Could you just quickly explain how do you get a licensed account?
Yes, I can. That will be a question for CIT. So if you would like a license account now, I'm sure that you could reach out to them individually. I do know that, as Ryan mentioned, we just switched over to a corporate higher ed account. So I'm not sure if they have a plan in place yet. They may tell you that it's coming soon. Ryan, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I don't know if they'll be announcing a plan, but yes, the license, the corporate account's been purchased and they are distributing them. All you need to do is send an email to the CIT help email or put in a work order. And I hear from other folks, it's just taking like a day or two and then they have it.
Annie, I think your headphones may not have a microphone. So if you just unplug your headphones from the computer, then your microphone will pick up on your.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So suppose I were to start a recurring meeting in my web portal. Okay. I'm also meeting synchronously with students. So I need to write the time that I'm going to meet them from noon to 12:50. How do I do that?
So I would recommend that link will be what the students want to click on. And you'll want to include that link, whether you post it on Moodle or in an email. You'll want to say, join this link at 12 to 12:50. Because when you put a time on the Zoom meeting within the web portal, that time is really just a guesstimation of how long the meeting is going to be and when it's going to take place. So you could technically start that Zoom meeting if you put a time in it, and or run it for however long you want if you put a time and duration in it. The recurring meeting will just help you not have to recreate a link for every single session throughout your semester. So you'll just want to make sure students are aware of when they should be joining in with that link.
Okay, so I don't have to put in a time, and the time can be at any time.
Yep. All right. So now I am going to start sharing my screen again, and we're going to talk a little bit about hosting a meeting within your desktop client. So when you click on a link to start a meeting, it's going to automatically open up your desktop client for you. Now there are two different ways that you can actually go to start your meeting. If you're most comfortable with using the Zoom web portal, and you're having trouble finding where that desktop client is on your actual computer, a great way to start a meeting is to just log into your web portal and clicking on this start button right here. That will start the meeting. It'll open up the tab, launch your desktop client for you. And because you're identified as the host within Zoom, it will automatically know that the desktop client will automatically know to start the meeting because you're the host. So you can click on start as an easy way to start your meeting. If you are comfortable with your desktop client, if you open up your desktop client, which is that application on your computer, it'll open you up to a home screen like this. You'll want to click on meetings. Now this is my account, so I have a ton of meetings already scheduled, whether they're meetings or webinars on my left-hand side, but reoccurring meetings will be at the bottom. So you'll want to scroll down, you'll want to click on your recurring meeting, and then just click the start button. When you click on start, it will open up your Zoom window, just like the window that we are all in right now. You'll notice along the bottom that this view, because I am the host, I have a lot of different options down at the bottom. So I have more than just you are seeing right now on your screen. I'm going to go through these just to talk a little bit more in depth about some different capabilities and settings that you can set actually within that Zoom meeting. Starting on the left-hand side, you'll have your mute and your start video buttons. These are really great for muting and starting your video on the fly. One tip, and I think Matt is going to talk about this later, but if you mute yourself, and this is something that you can encourage students to use in class, if you're muted, a quick shortcut to unmute yourself if you want to chime into the conversation is to just click and hold your space bar. For however long you click and hold that space bar, it will unmute you. And then when you release from the space bar, it will mute you automatically again. So it's a really great way in a meeting or a class setting to unmute yourself to chime in and to know that it will automatically mute yourself on the tail end of that. The two little carrots next to the start video, stop video, and the mute, unmute buttons are really great as easy access to your audio and video settings. So if you click on those carrots, it will open up a menu that you can use in case you're having some trouble with your audio or video. So you can make sure that your microphone and your speakers are set correctly. And then also you can test your speaker and your microphone if you want to just double check that it's working before you go ahead and start your account. And then the same with the video settings as well. So if you click on the little carrot by your start video, if you have multiple webcams plugged into your computer for any reason, if you want to add a virtual background, or if you want to change some of your video settings, you can do that from there instead of having to go to your settings on your computer. The next thing would be security. So security will be an option that you have once you host on a licensed account. You'll be able to enable the waiting room or disable the waiting room. lock the meeting if you want to avoid others coming into the meeting once the class is starting. Say you have a attendance policy and students have 5 minutes from the start time to be there. At that 5-minute mark, you could lock the meeting and then no one else would be able to enter. You can also grant privileges to some participants, whether you want to allow your students to share their screen, use or not use the chat, rename and unmute themselves. The next section is your participants panel. So when you click on the participants panel, depending on the way that you have it set up, it will either open up on the right-hand side of your desktop client, or it may open up as a pop-up screen. You'll see the name of all the participants in there. When I was setting this up, I only had one person in there, so you can't see the rest. But what is cool about the waiting room is on your end, when students start to join, they will populate in this waiting room up at the top. So you can individually admit them, or if there are more than one in the waiting room, you can admit all. So if you click on admit all, then all of them will be automatically admitted. Another nice feature is the messaging feature in a waiting room. So you can send a message to everyone in the waiting room if you're running a few minutes behind, or if you want them to gather certain materials before starting class. So you can actually broadcast a message out to everyone. Once you admit them, they'll pop down into the participants grid, and then you have a few different abilities to manage your participants during the meeting. When you hover over their name, you'll be able to mute or ask them to unmute themselves if they're having trouble unmuting themselves, or if students are talking in the background and they forget to mute their microphones. You can also do that at the bottom. There's a quick option to mute all if you have a lot of students in your class. When you click on the more, this will open up a panel that you can directly start a chat with them. If they don't have their video on, you can ask them to start the video. I'd avoid making students a host because that will take away your hosting privileges. You can regain those hosting privileges if you accidentally hit that, but you may want to make them a co-host. So right now in this very meeting, I am the host and Ryan and Matt are co-hosts. So they have the same abilities that I do within the meeting, whether it is adjusting participants, muting people, sharing their screen, and so on. So if you do have a co-host or a co-teacher, you can make them a co-host. You can rename, put people back in the waiting room. And then the last option would be removing a student. So if you need to remove a student for any reason, you can click remove. One thing to note is if you do click this, they will not be able to rejoin your Zoom meeting unless in your default settings on your web portal, you set the ability to have people rejoin after they've been removed. And again, that's in the Zoom 101 document if you want to look into that a little bit more. Another thing on the participants panel is down here at the bottom of the screen, there are some non-verbal gestures that students can use. On your screen, if you were to click on your participants panel, you would see the first option as raise your hand. So this is a really great option if students are asking questions to control the flow of those questions coming in. You can raise your hand, students can respond quickly, yes or no, give you a thumbs up, ask for a coffee break, ask for more time, et cetera, et cetera. So those are a really great way to engage with students within the meeting and to kind of get a gut check of where everyone is at. And then the last thing is in the more. So if you click on more, it will open up another menu for the participants. And there are a few different settings that you can turn on and off during your meeting. Going down the line, the next one would be chat. So if you click on chat, it will again open up on your side panel, or it may open up as an alternate window. Within chat, you have the ability to change who you are messaging to by clicking on this down arrow. You can send a file directly to your students within your actual class. And one thing to note with that is those files aren't saved anywhere. So you'll want to encourage students, if you are sending files through chat, to open and save them locally on their computer before ending the meeting, or they'll lose the file. And then the last thing is clicking on these three little dots. Those will allow you to change the chat settings of who participants can actually chat with. So if you want to restrict them from private messaging each other during your class, you can make sure that everyone can chat publicly and not privately. Or if you want them to just be able to chat you can click on host only. Another feature, and if you turn on record automatically, you won't have to worry about this, but if you did want to record within the meeting, you just click record and select either to this computer or to the cloud. And then with polling, so we added that question before the meeting actually began when we were scheduling our meeting. So to activate the poll, you'll click on polling. It'll open up a screen and you can see here that this was our first poll that Ryan activated at the beginning. If you click on this caret right here, it will open up how many polls that we have assigned at the beginning when we were scheduling our meeting. And say I wanted to administer poll number 2, I would click on poll number 2. I'd click launch poll. Launch poll will then send that poll question to all your participants. You'll be able to see in real time how many people are voting, how long the poll has been out, if you want to say they have 30 seconds to respond. And then you'll see what answer choices are being populated as they selected. When you click end poll, you'll have the option to share those results out with your students or just see them yourself. And in the event that you wanted to ask the same question again later on in the meeting, you could relaunch that poll. The last feature I want to talk about is screen sharing. So if you click on screen sharing, it will open up a lot of different options for you. The first two will be however many desktops you have. Now, right now, it is showing that I have 2 desktops because I have an external monitor attached to my laptop. If you select the desktop option, it will share your entire screen regardless of what you have on that screen. So right now you can see if I were to select desktop 2, it has a lot of different windows open up in the background. Now, one thing to avoid showing something that you don't want to show would be going down to the other windows down here and clicking on the specific application window that you want to share. So for instance, in this presentation, I clicked on Google Chrome Teaching with Zoom because that was the presentation that I wanted to share. This will avoid me sharing any other screens and any other sensitive information, say from an email that I have opened up in the background or grades or things like that. And then the other more advanced features would be, you do have the option of creating a whiteboard that is a shared screen. So if you wanted to say attach, or if you wanted to work through problems or let people work on a whiteboard. And then a really advanced setting, and you can learn more about this by clicking on the link in the Zoom 101 to learn more about sharing your iPad or your iPhone via AirPlay or cable. Some professors, I've heard of them attaching their iPads to their laptops through a cable. And then through the use of an Apple Pen, they're able to write on their iPad screen as a whiteboard, whether they're working out math problems, writing chemical equations, and things like that. And that allows them to teach better, like they would have a whiteboard in their classroom. 2 things to note: if you are intending to share videos or computer sound, you'll want to check these 2 boxes down here to let Zoom know that, so it will share your sound. If you don't click this, it won't share your computer sound. And then click share, and that will start the shared screen. Now we're going to talk a little bit more in the second portion about breakout rooms. But for now, I do want to mention on that Zoom 101 document that we'll share out after this meeting, in each section, or most of the sections, it has links to the actual Zoom knowledge base. So if you want to learn more or go more in depth than maybe Zoom 101, you can by clicking on those links, whether it is the more advanced screen sharing settings or some different ways that you can use polling. So there are a lot of other resources linked throughout that document. But for now, are there any questions for me about scheduling a meeting, hosting a meeting, or any of the other things I've talked about?
I had a question about polling. So in your web portal, you set up the poll. Will that then be available in your desk portal as well? Because you set it up in the web portal, but then you pulled it up and launched it in your desk portal. It will?
Yes, that's a great question. Yep, so when you set up the question in your web portal, those poll questions will be accessible when you're in your desktop client. And it's easiest to set up the questions beforehand. Now with a recurring meeting, those poll questions will stay in there from session to session unless you change them. So you'll want to update those poll questions in the same meeting invitation. So it will change not the meeting invite link, but it will change the polls within that meeting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a question. So I used Google Meet in the spring, and one thing that we were told was that when you're sharing your screen, theoretically it should work to share a video clip, but that actually it doesn't. It uses too much bandwidth. How does that work with Zoom? Is that the same answer, that it's too much bandwidth, or is Zoom better at that?
I have found that Zoom is a little bit better with sharing video clips. I think it ultimately depends on how fast your wireless speed is wherever you're hosting the meeting. So if you have a really fast, what they call upload speed, it will upload that video pretty quick within the Zoom meeting. If you are planning on sharing a lot of videos, it might be best practice to have students watch them beforehand in preparation so that you don't have to worry about sharing too many videos. But if you're sharing a short video or sharing music, I've typically found with Zoom, it works a little bit better than Google Meets.
Okay, thank you.
Marla, this is Ryan.
Yeah.
I've taught online synchronous classes for years, and I ended up finding that, at least for me, I feel like it works simplest and easiest for everyone's technology if I paste a link in the chat board and say, I want you to watch 0 minutes to 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody mute, we'll come back to the class in 5 minutes. I find that a little bit simpler.
Sure.
Then you don't have to worry about, is it a high volume internet day in my neighborhood or this or that. So that I almost always do that now rather than try to actually share the video through Zoom. Although I've heard, as Jason said, that Zoom works much better than Google Meet.
Thank you. And I did end up doing that in the spring semester for a couple of situations. What I don't have yet, while I'm building my skill set, I don't know how to post something on YouTube myself. And so I was able to do that if I could find it. I don't know, are we doing like Zoom 103 or something somewhere along the line for something like that?
This is maybe a sidebar about posting videos, is you can actually upload videos directly to your Google Drive so that you don't have to upload them to a YouTube site. And then you can share that link to that uploaded video with your students to access that video. So there's link sharing that you can turn on for videos within your Google Drive so that you don't have to upload to YouTube.
I have two questions. One, for sharing screen, like you want your students to show their work or something on the screen, do they have to be co-hosts or can anyone share a screen?
In the security settings, if you change it to everyone, allowing all participants to share their screen, then anyone can share their screen.
Okay.
So you'll just want to turn on that setting in your security.
Okay. And then the other one is for those icons that right now that we show, I showed two, the clap and the thumbs up, but we saw that there were more that you could have. Is there a setting that we choose them or is it a default?
That's a great question. So it's a little confusing with Zoom. So there's something called reactions, which you'll see in your bottom toolbar, and that's where you see the clap and the thumbs up. So when I click on those, it will put it on top of my video right now. So you see my little clapping hands. But if I click on my participants panel, so if you click on participants, and the bottom, you should see those nonverbal options. So then if I click on yes, if you look next to my name, then now there's a green check mark. Whereas if you were to click raise your hand, it would show up in that participants grid of raising your hand.
Jack, you had a question in the chat that I think I don't have the answer to, but Jason might. Jason, the question Jack was asking, he said, should he use AirPlay or should he use the whiteboard function if he's wanting to use an external whiteboard with Zoom? My recommendation was going to be use the implemented whiteboard function in Zoom, but I don't know if you wanted to answer that as well.
Yeah, that might be a good question for CIT, just in how they could equip you with what you need to share your whiteboard.
Yeah, I've been using the whiteboard with the stylus, or at least I have that, but it's very small and you need to erase it. I mean, you can barely write like one word on it at a time. So.
I'm wondering about closed captioning. I know with Google Meet, we use that a lot, or we were supposed to, you know, for accessibility. I understand Zoom doesn't have it. How are we handling that as a college, that issue?
That's a great question. Feel free, others who want to chime in too. Leo Herzog and I have been experimenting with some of the different third-party services that you can add into Zoom. So there's a service called RevCaption that does provide live closed captioning within Zoom. I think CIT is looking more into how much it costs and how we equip people with it. So I would maybe reach out to CIT just so they know that others are asking, as well as us looking into it. I know Google Meet, I think, does allow you to automatically add closed captionings built into their portal though.
Yeah, Zoom actually does also have, so they don't have a closed captioning option, but they have what's called open caption. So in Google Meets, your students can click the closed caption icon, which will then start to dictate on their screen only. If you go into your personal settings in your Zoom account, there is an option where you can click on, it says closed captioning, but it's actually what's the term is open caption, where the screen, your words or whoever's talking will appear on everybody's screen. So that is an option in your settings.
Matt, is that then just what I say gets captioned, or does every participant gets captioned?
Every participant gets captioned, and it gets captioned on everybody's screen. Unlike Google Meet, where only each controller, if they click closed caption, it's only on theirs. So that's why it's closed versus open caption.
And that's any meeting that I am the host of takes that up.
Yeah, and that's in your settings. You have to go into your settings to set that up.
It's a 10:01. We got a 2-hour meeting. Delightful. Although that was awesome. Thank you, Jason. We are gonna take let's take like a 5-minute break. Feel free to stretch your legs or whatever you need to do. So we'll come back here like 5 after 10, 6 after 10, and kind of kick it back. We'll have more opportunity for Q&A. So write those questions down. We'll do more either at the beginning or at the end. So we'll see you back in a few minutes.
For anyone who's still on, you know, when you do those other icons and you look at the participants, because it shows up at the participants, is there a way to keep your participants up? Because like you have 30 kids, like in my stats class, I won't see them all at the same time. So and as I'm teaching, I may not scroll up and down. Is there a way to let it all show, or no? Anybody know?
So if you click on your participants panel, does it open for you as a pop-up window, or does it open for you as a sidebar?
As a sidebar, and then I have to slide down to see them all. But maybe because I'm not hosting.
Yeah, that could be one thing. And we could test this out, but I do believe that Zoom automatically sorts the participants panel, putting those who use the nonverbal gestures at the top. So when I click yes or no, it'll funnel them up to the top so you see a list.
Okay, good. I was thinking, boy, as I'm teaching, that's going to be hard to. So that's a good thing. Okay,
Jason, is there a way to force the participant panel to be in its own window?
I believe so. If you click on the little caret at the top of that panel, directly to the left of the participants title, and click pop out, it should pop that participants panel off of your screen. So say you had dual monitors, you could put the participants panel on another screen and make it bigger if you'd like.
One more quick question. So Jason, you're not breaking. The other quick question is, if you, oh crap, I just forgot what it was. It'll come back. Oh, I wanted to have put in my syllabi that everyone's picture has to be shown during class. But then I was thinking about bandwidth. But if the students are at school, do they have enough bandwidth at school that it's okay to do that? Or, not that they're at home or something?
I'm no CIT guru, but I would say Hope's Wi-Fi is pretty strong, and they'll probably make sure that it has enough bandwidth for all students to be virtual
Okay.
and have
Yeah.
their cameras ready to go.
Yeah. I didn't want to be insensitive for someone who may not, but as long as they're on campus, and I'm pretty good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Jason, I had a quick question. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can.
Yeah. Okay. So my internet, like yesterday, I looked at it. It does. I went to fast.com, and so I have like 160. Like it's very fast. But then, whenever I link on to like meetings like this, it keeps saying that my internet is unstable, and then like your image freezes. Like I've already had it done like twice during this meeting where I had to leave and start all over again. Is there any way I can take care of that?
Yeah, I'm sure CIT could probably answer that a little bit more in depth. A couple of things that I would say is, one, did you test your Wi-Fi where you currently are sitting, or was your laptop somewhere else when you tested it?
Oh, when I tested it, I was in the bedroom, and where I'm currently sitting is the dining room. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great, so with Wi-Fi, depending on where you are or how far away from the modem you are, your Wi-Fi speed may be unstable in some parts of your house. So CIT could probably help answer those questions.
Okay.
One thing, if you're worried about that, you can always hardwire through an Ethernet cable from your laptop into your router so that you don't have to worry about Wi-Fi. And again, CIT can help with that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it was Vicky Lynn. Somebody asked about bandwidth. I actually asked. I asked CIT. I think it was I was talking to Jeff Peston and Carl about the bandwidth question. I was like, well, what if we've got all there's all these online classes at 11 a.m. On campus. Like, what's going to happen? And they said our current internet bandwidth has to withstand half of the population streaming Netflix in the evenings, in that our handfuls of classrooms during the day will not even touch how demanding the online streaming of shows is in the evening. So we should have no bandwidth problems.
I was wondering about that because I've had some experience. There's my video. This is Marla. I've had some experience in meetings where I have had the same frustration that Annie was describing. And it's not consistent, and it's always just when I don't want it to happen. And I was talking with one of my kids about this, and he works at a tech company on the West Coast. And he said that his meetings have consistently been no video, simply because the company has said, no, we don't want people freezing in the middle of a meeting. We're doing audio only. And so I don't know if anybody's particular classroom, if there are people who are having problems. I don't know. I don't know if that's a workaround for people to think about, or if people should ask CIT if that's a potential workaround, but it's just a thought, since that was something.
Something else, Mara, to the video question that you guys had, if you're using PowerPoint instead of Google Slides, which is a different function, but if you're using PowerPoint, I've discovered two things. Number one, like Jason said, when you click to share your screen in the bottom, make sure you click share video and share audio. Number one, the audio, like Jason pointed out, will make sure that the participants on the call can hear the sound that your computer's producing. That second one that says maximize video capacity, that will condense the video so it reduces the amount of bandwidth it's using to send the video to the student's computer. So that's another thing. The third thing then is that, or yeah, whatever number I'm on, is that in PowerPoint, rather than putting a hyperlink in the PowerPoint that then takes you to YouTube or Vimeo, which is an outside server, embed the video in PowerPoint, and that too will compress the video, which again will cause it to run quicker.
Thank you.
Well, we're gonna kind of kick it back to our official program. We could probably do Q&A for the next hour if we needed to as well. So we may have to continue some of the Q&A even after our session. We're gonna shift gears a little bit, and I'm want to introduce, many of you know him, but I want to introduce Professor Matt Farmer. He is our Dorothy Wiley DeLong Associate Professor of Dance. He's also the current department chair for the dance department. He has I won't rattle them off, but he has got a kind of a host of professional accomplishments as a dancer and director, an educator, performer, author, and he's currently involved in a number of cross-divisional things on campus. He's one of the members of our Gen Ed task force. He's on our NetView grant advisory committee, and he's also just been one of the faculty who's been really kind of ready and willing to dive into figuring out how to make Zoom work in a variety of different class types. And thankfully for FYS, most of us don't have to figure out wireless mics, music, choreography, timing of sound for that choreography between presenter and student. So this is probably a piece of cake for him to talk to us about how to use Zoom for seminars. But I want to go ahead and pass it over to Matt, who's going to continue the conversation on Zoom and also kind of help us think about some of these tools in relationship to our teaching strategies.
Thanks, Ryan. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is we're going to do a breakout room session, just so you all can experience it. And Jason is in the background, currently creating those breakout rooms for us. And so the reason I really enjoy breakout rooms is that they allow two things to happen. Number one, obviously like your classroom, if those of you who are seminar-based teachers, breakout rooms allow your students to go into a separate room, as it were, and have a discussion. Why that's helpful is, of course, you're giving the students the opportunity to say things perhaps that they might not say if you were in the room. And that's one of the beauties of having actually online education versus in-person education. To do that in physical space, we'd have to have separate rooms and things like that. Number two, what I discovered over the springtime while doing this is that students, ironically, are, at least in my experience, more open with each other when they're doing a breakout session. And that's probably, I would argue, because they feel a little more freedom to be honest because they're not physically sitting in the same space as somebody else that they're about to disagree with. And so the breakout rooms are a great way, I think, to, if you have a hot topic issue or if you want the students to dive into something a little deeper, that's a great way rather than just keeping everybody on Zoom and asking for people to chime in. So with that then, we're going to break you into breakout groups. And we want you to talk about two things. Number one, the first question is, what is a big question or concern that you have specifically for FYS this fall? So that's the first question. Again, I'll say, what is a big question or what is a concern that you have specifically for FYS this fall? Number two, on the flip side, what gives you hope for the fall? Every pun intended in that question. But so again, one more time, what is a big question or concern that you have specifically for your FYS class this fall? And then what gives you hope about this coming fall? And so I'm going to now have Jason break you all into your breakout sessions, and then we'll call you back in a few minutes. All right. Welcome back, everybody. So hopefully you had a chance to experience the breakout room. You know, generally speaking, again, you may have noticed even amongst yourselves, sometimes it takes a little while for things to get rolling. So anybody who's done class discussion knows that. So if you're going to use breakout sessions in your classroom, I definitely recommend giving yourself or giving the students probably a good 10-minute window at the minimum, because that's about how long it's going to take them to get over the, like, what do we do now? Well, here's the questions. What should we talk about? Here's the questions. And then usually about by minute 8, they actually start talking about what you asked them to talk about. So I always say minimum 10 minutes. 15 minutes is usually a good round time, you know, for a breakout session. And then as you saw, Jason, since he's controlling the breakout rooms, was able to send you guys a 1-minute warning. You can send out different warnings if you want, 1 minute or 5 minute, just so your students are aware that time is coming done. Great, so with that then, I'm actually gonna turn it back over to Jason, and he's gonna actually show you how to do a breakout room session. And then we'll come back to me and I'll give you guys some just other best practices I've discovered.
Great, so one thing that we just double checked is that, and this is an important note, is only the host of the meeting will have the breakout room option down below on their toolbar. So even if you have co-hosts in the meeting, they won't be able to see breakout rooms. If you are the host and you click on breakout rooms, it will initially open up this panel. And this will be here if you don't pre-assign your breakout rooms. You can either choose to automatically assign students into however many rooms you indicate, or doing it all manually. One thing to note is if you do select automatically, this will not automatically put them in their breakout rooms. It will just randomly assign students into rooms. You still have the ability, and you'll see here when I click create breakout rooms with automatic, you'll still have the ability to move students around. So you can swap students out, reassign them to different rooms if you want to balance out the groups with certain students a little bit better. And then once you do that, before you actually open the rooms, there's a couple different options down below. So if you need more rooms, you can add them. And if you click on options, this is what you'll want to set before you open your breakout rooms. So once you open the breakout rooms, you won't be able to change these settings. I would always recommend turning on move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. That will just push students into their breakout rooms as soon as you open them and not require them to say, yes, join that breakout room. This option, allow participants to return to the main session at any time, is really nice if you want students to be able to come and go from that main room. So say you wanted students to come back and touch base with you when they're having their group discussion, just like they would in a classroom. Turn this on so students can come and go from their specific room to the main session. If you want to put a time limit so you don't have to worry about it, you can turn on breakout rooms close automatically. That will set the timer and start it as soon as they break out. And then the countdown. So as you saw, there was like a 15-second countdown when I closed the breakout rooms. You can turn a countdown on and change the seconds. So then once you have the settings ready to go, people in their breakout rooms, you'll click on Start Rooms. It'll change the screens. Students will automatically start being pushed out into their different breakout rooms. You'll have the ability to join all of the different rooms and you can come and go as you please. So if you want to pop in on groups as they go. You'll also be able to, like Matt said, broadcast a message out to all of the breakout rooms. This would be nice if you want to send out discussion questions or warnings or a question that another group asked that you want every group to talk about. And what's cool, and I can't show you on this screen, but on your screen when you were in the breakout rooms, you had the ability to ask for help. So everyone in their breakout rooms can click on the Ask for Help button. When a student clicks on that, it'll open a pop-up on your screen saying, so-and-so in breakout room asked for help. And then you can click Join Breakout Room and it will automatically put you into that breakout room. You can help them and then come back to this main session yourself. Before I kick it back to Matt, are there any questions about breakout room functionality, specifics about breakout rooms that I can answer?
Yes, I had a quick question. So when you sign in for automatically, like assign them to breakout rooms, will it do that? Will you have to enter like your class list for all 18 students and they'll then assign them, or anybody who's already on the Zoom call will be assigned automatically?
Anyone who's in the Zoom call will be assigned automatically.
Okay. And will it be the same groups or in a recurring meeting, or will it be different groups?
I believe it will be different every time you go to start the breakout rooms. You do have the option, once you start breakout rooms, if you everyone come back to the same session, you can go back out to those exact same breakout rooms. So you could recreate the rooms that you just had in that same meeting. But I think once you end the meeting, the next time, if you click automatically, it will be a random shuffle. Now you have the ability to put people into specific rooms if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Do it manually.
Yeah. Thank you.
One other thing about breakout rooms before we keep going is something else we were just discussing is that for many of us, we'll have to be recording our classes. You know, in the case of a student being sick or something like that, or asynchronous. When you create breakout rooms, make sure that you hit the pause recording button on the session. Otherwise, what will happen is that your students will go to a breakout room, but it will still be recording you, right? Just sitting there waiting or getting coffee or whatever you're doing while you're out session. So you'd want to hit pause, and then when you come back, you hit the play button again. Just a warning to, you know, from someone who's lived it by experience. So
Matt, on that point, is there any way to record the conversations in the breakout rooms, or is only the main session capable of being recorded?
that's a great question. I've only ever done the main session. Jason, do you know, can you record the breakout room sessions?
I think you can, but someone within that breakout room would probably have to initiate the recording.
It's an
so you can't automatically.
How do you pause it? Where is it? So I see the recording button up here. As the host, there's a place to pause it.
Yeah, so if you see the recording button, I don't know if your screen, it's hard. The one challenge with Zoom is I could screenshot.
Oh.
You're muted, Matt.
Can you see my shared screen right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my view. So in the bottom, when it's recording, you can see pause or stop. Pause obviously will pause it, allow you to restart it. Stop will end it. And then those are also up here in the top left-hand corner as well.
I think that would be good if there's some, you know, difficult topic you need to talk about with the class, or you want them to share without worrying about it. You can pause the recording for that. So that's good to know.
Yeah, and so that little pause/stop button, both at the bottom and the top, when you've paused, then the pause button becomes a play button. So the idea is that then you would have to press play again to keep recording. And if you were to hit stop for some reason, don't worry about it. Just hit record again, and then you could either go in and splice the two videos together or just send the student the two links. But yeah.
I have a question about recording. I teach public speaking classes, and in the spring, when I would record, if I had students present, sometimes it didn't record their presentation. It was still recording me, even though I had given them control, right, to do their presentation, but yet it didn't record them, it recorded me. Like I could hear them, but I could see me on the screen. And yet other students, when I would have 4 students present during one class period, and some of them I would see the actual student, and some of them I would see me. And so do you know why that was happening? I tried to fix that so many ways, and I just could not get that to work.
One fail-safe way I might recommend is that in the top right-hand corner of everybody's Zoom meeting right now, you see, to me, it looks like a movie reel, but it says speaker view on it. Now we're all in what's called tile view, I assume. If you click that, that'll suddenly give you one photo or one video, and right now, if you click it, it's just me now, because I'm the one talking. I would say a fail-safe way, if that were to happen again, is to, you as the host, click speaker view during those sessions, because then it will record whatever the speaker is who's talking. But I can't answer why it was happening with some people and why it wasn't with others.
And mute yourself, Dawn, to make sure you don't become the speaker while the student is speaking.
Right. It was just strange because on my screen, they're usually presenting with slides. So I had them use split screen, half slide, half their face. That's what I saw on my screen, but that's not what recorded, which I just couldn't figure out why that was happening. Anyway, I might have to dig deeper because I don't want that to happen.
Option 2 might be just to not do the split screen. That might be a fail. And again, this is deeper into the technology than I have, but that might be an option. And the only reason I know that is because I did a couple of lectures this summer that were recorded, and when I did it, I did not do split screen. I just did the presentation or the slides.
Okay.
You might also consider another program to record off of your computer. One such program is called Screenium, which can capture the video of whatever you select on your computer. You might have to play with your audio depending on how you have your audio playing, but CAT might be able to give you some suggestions on additional programs if you want to use as a fail-safe.
Yeah, that's great. Great idea. Thank you.
It was screen what?
It's called Screenium, but there are a bunch of different programs. That's just the one I'm familiar with.
Great. So we'll keep forging ahead here. I'm going to share my screen now. And so I'm just going to make sure that we are here. And I think everybody can see this. Is that correct? Great. So some key features here real quick with sharing or using Zoom specifically for your classes. One is obviously using the technology we talked about. I'm going to just reiterate again, I think for me, one of the important aspects that I've learned is while these little, the headphones that, the iPhone with the headphones and the microphone are great. There's a lot of great technology out there, wireless headsets that are just as well. So all that being said, just like Jason said, I definitely recommend if you're going to be teaching online to make sure that you have a headset and a microphone of some sort. The main reason is anybody who's been on a Zoom call and you hear that feedback loop that's going, that's because somebody is using just their computer speakers and their computer microphone for the meeting, and what's happening is that the microphone and the computer is picking up the sound coming out of the speakers, which is then causing it to pick up and create a loop. So that's one thing you maybe want to talk with your students too, is just asking them to also make sure that they have headphones with a microphone as well. Also making sure headphones alone is not enough. Because what will happen is if you plug your headphones into your computer, then your computer will shut off the microphone to your computer. And so that way you'll be able to hear, or a student will be able to hear, but they won't be able to chime in the conversation. Background, Jason talked about this a little bit, making sure looking for the best background. Obviously, if you don't know, Zoom has a great option too that you can create a virtual background. Some of you guys are using it already. I'll talk about a fun little game that some of my colleagues are playing with that. But as far as background goes, definitely trying to reduce the amount of, just kind of access things behind you. Also, distance from the computer is an important aspect. So I think one thing that Jason talked about obviously was the angle of the computer, making sure it wasn't too far low, so you're shooting up your nose. It's not too far high, so you're seeing your forehead. but the distance that you create from the computer is important too, especially if you're somebody like me who uses their hands a lot to talk. So I think that's an important thing to think about as you're prepping your class. Settings in Zoom, I talked about this a little bit. I won't go into detail, so if anybody wants information on this, then I can certainly walk you through it. But for people like me, like Ryan said, who have to work on not just necessarily showing slides or videos, but also I have a live musician who is on a Zoom call to accompany my class. So there's a lot of advanced settings in Zoom, in the video and the audio options that make having guests or simultaneous guests a lot more easy and a lot more effective. So just knowing those, like I said, I'm not going to go through just because I know we're running short on time, but there's some more advanced settings that are helpful if you're one of those people who who's going to be doing more than just sharing slides or videos. Jason already touched on this, but I think again it's important, worth re-mentioning. Create one link for one course. You know, whether you, like Jason said, post it in your Moodle, whether you simply send that one link to your students in an email and say, here's the link. Zoom, if you really want to get fancy, has the option for you to create actually the actual class time and the number of days and when you want it to end and what days you want it to end. Again, that's kind of more in the advanced options, but I'm highly, just like Jason encouraged, creating one link for one course, and that just prevents us all, which we kind of get what I call like Zoom fatigue, where you're like, wait, what link was it? So again, posting it to Moodle is probably the easiest, that link. And then lastly, using your shortcuts. So Jason talked about this a little bit. There's a couple different shortcuts that I really recommend people use. The first one, like Jason pointed out, is the microphone option and helping your students understand this. So there's a little trick to it too, by the way, but number one is that if you just press and hold the space bar, and while you're holding it, then your microphone's on, you let go of the space bar, and suddenly your microphone's off. The trick to that, though, is that some of your students, and you'll discover this, is that if they are doing email or running through Twitter and they just are listening to you, you have to be in Zoom as your main source on your screen in order for that function to happen. The reason I say that is you may, you know, if you're in a meeting and you're working on email and then you press and hold the space bar, because you haven't clicked back into Zoom as your main feature on your home screen, then that option won't work. A couple other shortcuts that I recommend, I was talking to Jason about this. One of them is the option where if I'm screen sharing, in fact, I'm doing it right now, that I have the option of actually keeping one small window of Zoom open on my computer. And so I'll only see one student, but it's a way for me to still check in and make sure students are there. And then usually actually what I'll do is, to Jason's point, I'll grab that small pop-up window and drag it and put it below, right below where my camera is on my computer. So that way, as I'm talking to students or sharing, I can see their reactions. There's a couple other shortcuts. Again, I'm happy to talk about a little bit later, but like I said, I know we're running short on time. So using your shortcuts is a great tool. Next thing, I'm going to touch a little bit on student engagement, and Ryan and I are going to sort of play ping pong here in this. So number one, the first thing I tell faculty about Zoom is that it's not, your online classroom is not your physical classroom. In some regards, that's great, like we've talked about, because it's easier to do breakout sessions and allow students to talk to each other quietly. You know, obviously, there's a lot of options like closed captioning or open captioning in Zoom that you don't have in your physical classroom. That being said, one of the things I had to learn very quickly is to embrace the technology and the options that online classes gave me, and then how can I create the best classroom in that virtual space than trying to recreate my physical classroom online. And the moment that you can make that transition, the quicker, I think personally, this is for me, the quicker and faster I was able to start to learn stuff and learn new things for my online class. Where before I was really struggling of trying to just recreate what I did in the classroom online. So I think that's the first kind of hurdle to cross, is that, you know, there's just no way we can do that. Next thing, You will have to put in work up front. That's the biggest challenge, I think, also that you know, that faces all of us. Partly in the chat we were talking about, I appreciate Rich said, you know, who do we practice with? Confessedly, I used my wife and my kids during spring break when we knew we were going to go online. I just would, like, every night for 20 minutes, like, all right, everybody get your computers open. I'm going to try some stuff. And so kind of you have to upload everything before. The nice thing is once classes start virtually online, it's really a breeze once you've really figured it out. So there is some heavy lifting up front, but it's totally worth it in the end. Using your Zoom tools, Jason talked about this, raising your hands. So right now, only because I have my window open, I can see, like I said, one person. However, that being said, if you don't have that window, not a problem. One of the things I tell my students when I'm presenting online, this is literally the script I give them. I'll say to them, hey, when I'm presenting, I'm flying blind. So if you could not use your blue hand, but if you could simply unmute yourself, say my name, so say Professor Farmer, that will let me know I need to stop talking. Then say your name. This is, you know, Julie, whoever. I'll say, yes, Julie, what's your question? And then ask your question. It's a really nice way to keep the rapport. It allows the students to feel the freedom, and it encourages them to actually, if we want to use the word, interrupt my lecture, but it allows me to not have to jump between my Zoom view and my, you know, my slides or my presentation. So that's just one thing I recommend. However, in the class mode, right, using the raise hand, using the poll breakout rooms are great ways to make sure that your students stay engaged. Like we said, practice before you begin. And then the other thing I discovered too, when you're presenting, like I am right now, ask a lot of questions as you're going along of the students. Obviously, a lot of us, I think, had experiences where you could see the student was falling asleep or, I don't know, eating lunch or things like that. And so the more you can, in your lectures, if you're particularly doing lecture heavy classes, the more questions you can insert in your class. And it doesn't always have to be breakout sessions, but again, I'll push those are great. The more engaged your students are going to learn, they have to be, right? So they can't be on their phone or on their iPad or on another computer or their other screen, you know, doing whatever, you know, Netflix binging or whatever. That forces the students to remain engaged in the process. So that's just a couple tips that I have regarding that. And I'm going to pass it off to Ryan now and I'll stop sharing my screen for the be honest part. I think unless Ryan, am I getting ahead of myself? Are you, oh, that's right, you're doing the clarity one, right? Perfect, sorry, I'll jump back again. So I'll screen share again here. So being open and honest. So number one, as you see Jason and Ryan undoing, you know, when it comes to technology, if a student's saying, hi, this is happening or whatever, it's okay also to say, I don't know, and we'll work on it. We'll get it taken care of next time. That's part of the thing though that I'll say that I can't stress enough, practicing before you do anything in class. I always, you know, if I was going to insert or do something new in class, I always practice it at least once or twice with whether it was a family member or a friend or a colleague. You know, I would maybe call a colleague and say, hey, I need to try this real quick. Can you just jump on your computer at this time and let me try it? Be okay with the change in plans. I mean, as teachers, we know this, right? It's great if students actually start getting involved into deep discussion. And so if your breakout sessions suddenly, you know, the students are getting really deep into it and you're popping in between and suddenly you gave them 10 minutes and it times out and they all come back in, it's okay. You can either keep rolling, right, and move along and say, guys, it was great discussion, we need to move on. Or, like Jason said, you have the option of just reassigning, right, and sending them back from the breakout room. Say, hey guys, actually great discussion, let's keep going. So be okay with changing your plans as they go along, as well as throughout the semester. I think that's a big thing too, is giving yourself a little grace that things are going to change as you go through the semester. Checking in with students outside of class time is a big one for me. I discovered that the more I kept checking in with students, whether it was just a quick email, whether it was sometimes a text message, but just checking in on the students to say, hey, how are you doing? That was particularly really obviously important during the spring semester. I still think it's important leading into the fall semester because you have a lot of freshmen coming in. You guys are teaching FYS. A lot of them, it's their first, obviously it's their first time at college. While most of them, I think, did some kind of online learning in their high school this last year during their senior year, they probably don't remember a whole bunch of it. So the expectations are going to be different of them for what online learning means. Great. And then celebrating your students is a great way. You know, again, we do this as teachers. A lot of this is just basic pedagogical stuff, but I think sometimes when we're online, we feel like it has to be much more formal. And so I would just say, again, keeping the human aspect that you already insert into your physical classrooms, keeping it online is an important thing. And then the last one I say is maintaining your professionalism and your humanity. Obviously, I think nothing reads better than you being willing to laugh at yourself and vice versa, right? You know, that your students know that, yes, we're trying to be professional. Yes, here's my expectations of you as the student, right? But, you know, if a student emails you 2 minutes into class and, you know, my internet's not working, I just can't get on, you know, having a little bit of humanity, I always think goes a long way in those situations. So now I'm going to pass it over to Ryan, and he's going to take over for communicating with clarity.
Thank you, Matt. It's a little easier during an in-person class to read people, maybe get by with charisma. But when you're online and also during COVID, it's even more important to try to have a lot of clarity on what you're doing and on your communications and on the locations of materials. And so I want us to keep in mind, Matt just mentioned it, but these students, these incoming first-year students, some of them just had online classes in high school, some didn't, some had a variety of different classes. Regardless, they may not be familiar with our Hope lingo. They're going to get a schedule next week, and it's gonna say such and such class in person or face to face, such and such class online, such and such class hybrid. And they're not going to know what all that language means. And even on some of those classes, when it says online or hybrid, it's going to be different things. And it's going to be a little confusing and frustrating. And sometimes I think with FYS, we rightfully so, we ask ourselves, how much handholding do I need to do? How much should I do? We want to help them become young adults. We want to help them own their education. We want to help them find their own answers. But I think with communication and this kind of orientation to a new kind of hope, we need to reach back a little bit further than usual to make things really clear and really easy to find the right information. So a few notes kind of related to that. Just like we've mentioned it a couple times for this meeting, go over your online etiquette. Like start your first couple classes with reminders on basic etiquette for the class and basic features. I'd encourage you, whether it's on a slide deck or just in conversation, this is in educational psychology, you might call this a pre-organizer. Start class with an agenda or some objectives. Here's where we're going. You might even preface that with, last class, we X, Y, Z. This class, we're going to ABC, right? And similarly, I'd encourage you to end your classes with like a looking ahead note or slide. Here's what's coming next. Because we all think we're going to remember those things, right? And then we forget, and our students forget also. I think you don't need to do this, but I'd encourage you. I usually email my class like maybe once a week, just the plan, just as a reminder. Yes, it's already in the syllabus. Yes, I have it on Moodle, but I email them kind of a check-in, like here's what's happening this week. Here's the link again. Yes, the link is also in their recurring Google Calendar appointment. so I have the same information in all these places, some ways that might seem confusing. Rather, I think it makes it easier for students to be able to find things in a pinch, especially when they have different faculty doing things in different ways. I'd encourage you to have some sort of landing place digitally for your class. It doesn't need to be Moodle. You might have another platform or something else you use, but I'd encourage you to have a place that kind of either just posts or replicates your syllabus, so that they always know like where to quick go and see what's next and see the links and see what the assignments are that week. And then as a reminder, this is kind of FYS in particular, maybe all students in kind of our time of COVID, but one of the phenomenons for you FYS veterans, you recognize students need to learn how to have dialogue, right? They don't just show up knowing how to have real dialogue and genuine conversation. So that's one of the benefits of Zoom, this platform, that we can do small group conversations. You can have clear prompts, kind of like we attempted to model today. And I also, just as a reminder, in person, this is a kind of a normal phenomenon for FYS. Students are going to be a little bit less likely to talk in large group in the first semester, right? So if you're in person, many faculty in FYS have created a beautiful lesson plan, an exciting reading or video or some point of engagement, and then open it up for discussion. Crickets. Nothing. What's going on? Did they read it? Did they watch it? Why is this happening, right? There's just nothing there. That's even more likely with an online platform, and even with non-FYS students, right? It's just there's the technology delays, the uncertainty of when to speak. That's why I don't know if Jason or Matt referenced it earlier. When I teach online, I find that my students in the large group are much quieter than they are in the class, in a regular face-to-face classroom. But when I put them into a small group, they just erupt. Just like they do in the small group in the classroom. So but we have to kind of work and be ready to help them learn how to have conversations with one another. Sometimes some FYS, we'll talk more about this on July 21st when we have a lot of content on conversations, but some FYS professors will have their first like conversation in the class on how to have conversations. Lay out the ground rules, give them a softball easy prompt, kind of demo it, and actually kind of do it, and then like talk about what just happened. So that's it. We'll talk more about that in July 21. Also, just this is one other kind of note tip that you might consider. I think it helps with some kind of clarity and consistency. I really like to have I use recurring small groups largely in a lot of my classes, and if you're going to do that, a really good, really simple tool is to have each group just have a shared Google document that continues to get populated with course content throughout the semester. So for example, in my classes that I do online, the calendar appointment on Google Calendar, it'll have our Zoom link, and then it also will have, and this is our recurring appointment, it'll have the group 1 shared document, the group 2 shared document, the group, I don't know, say like Gryffindor, Slytherin, but all the group documents, and they're always the same. And then I go into those group documents every week. I put in a new date, I put in conversation prompts, questions, quizzes, activities, and everyone just kind of gets in this habit of that's where they go. It's class time, they open the meeting, they open their doc. They have little conversations on there, they're doing work together, and it's also kind of a record of where everything is. Next class, new date, new stuff. The old stuff is still on that document. It's kind of like a record of the interaction of the small group. I really like to do that. So that's one other tip. We're getting really low on time. That's it for my kind of communication clarity encouragement. I'll pass it back to Matt.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Like Ryan said, we're running short on time, so I'm gonna kind of blow through the rest of these slides. We will have them, I think, available for you guys. Just a couple additional thoughts. You know, when learning online, again, like I said, I've just discovered that there's no way to recreate the physical classroom. So a couple things I've said in previous sessions like this I've done in the summer. Number one, emphasizing context over content I found to be very, very helpful. That's another way to really engage the students, right? Making it relevant for them, right? Thinking yourself as the facilitator of knowledge rather than the source of knowledge, right? So in class, that was the big shift for me, particularly teaching online, is thinking, rather than saying I'm, delivering this information to the students to learn and be tested on, more or less seeing myself as kind of the librarian of the class and say, okay, we're going to get us started, but then here's additional things I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you watch this video. I'm going to have you go to this thing. We're going to, and that I found very successful with the students in really keeping their engagement, not just during class time, but through the whole semester. And then giving students resources, right, where they can discover the content that you may not be covering. That was something I had to do in my history course. I just realized in the springtime, no way we're going to get through it. That's okay. I've actually, even though I'm going to be teaching face-to-face ideally, I've already made that shift because I really enjoyed the idea of going into something or a few things a lot deeper. And then, this is, I think, the old adage called flipping the classroom, right? But it's a lot easier in online because you can actually, in real time, like Ryan said, hey, everybody, here's the Google link. Go watch this video. Come back, in 5 minutes. And then making connections where things are relevant. I think that's the other thing too, is that even though it's online, again, it can create this sort of distance. And so the more you can make things relevant to today, which again is a very pedagogical thing that we all do, but really leaning into that online is a really helpful tool as you continue to teach online. Resources, don't forget to use your resources. Jason, obviously myself, Ryan, anybody who's sort of in Zoom, like we said, consider using a HASP guest coming in. This is a great thing about being online, where before, right, you had to like schedule a class time and could they come in at that time and could they, how much were you going to pay them? It's great. People, you can have guests now who just call in on the Zoom meeting and they're your guests and they could be, in a different time zone. I'm even looking at having guests coming in and who can't actually make it because of their current job, but they're going to record a Zoom session for me. And then they're just going to send it, right? And I can just share that with the students. Replacing podcasts and videos and other media, or replacing readings. That, again, it's hard online to everybody sit and read together. You could do it by, in the chat box posting, a link to a specific PDF. But maybe consider, whether it's a video or a podcast, having everybody listen to the same podcast at the same time and give their reactions, or in the breakout room. I'm just going to jump through to the tail end here, inviting students into your home. I'll tell the story again every time. Both my daughters are at Hope. One of their professors every day made it a beginning of class, besides the nuts and bolts. What Ryan talked about is, she said, show me your pet, right? And I want to know your pet's name. And so it was a way, and then she showed the students. And that was one of the things that my daughter just loved about, she just got excited to go to class because she got to show our dog, which sounds funny, but college students kind of still get excited about those things. And then also, not only Zoom, but Vicki Lynn, I saw in the chat, you said a lot of students were feeling inundated with emails from professors. I think that's, again, that's where I would put this last bullet point. Consider reaching out to your students differently than email, right? So if you're going to do those weekly check-ins, I have a lot of students, if you're not comfortable with texting your students, totally understandable. Create a private Facebook page then for your class, right? Where you'll leave messages for the students and you can check in, right? Or if you're on Instagram or if you're on Twitter, like just check it, those are just little teeny things, doesn't take long. And again, it stops that sort of email inundation that students can feel from their professors that also have to do with, don't forget about your homework, don't forget about these things. Lastly, I used this in a presentation I did earlier this summer, but Burt Reynolds has this great saying. He says, the audience will always forgive you for being wrong and exciting, but never for being right and dull. And I think that's the one thing I was talking with Jason a little bit about, is that again, in virtual world, and I said it earlier in the presentation, we can get very stuck and very close to our screen, and I'm going to do it right now. You can see how boring it is if I'm sitting here for an hour and a half reading my slides. So there's nothing wrong, right? With, again, you might have to get a wireless microphone, which goes to the technology portion, right? But, you know, stepping away from the computer so the students can see you use your hands more, so that there can be a little more dialogue. I even, in the wall behind me during spring, had an actual physical whiteboard on my wall, you know, and of course I invested in a wireless microphone so that way I could be hands-free, walk away from the microphone, things like that. You know, but those little touches will make it both personal to students and more engaging. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I know there's lots more questions and answers. So
I think well, we're at 11:01, so we hit time. Sorry to interrupt you, Matt. I believe Jason, myself, and Matt can all stick around for a few minutes, but I just want to invite you to leave. Don't feel like you have to stick around. Time's up. We're done with our kind of presentation content. We can hang around a little bit and chat with you if you have some more questions you want to do. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Thank you. This was not a waste of time.
Thank you, Ryan. Matt, Jason.
Thanks, Ryan, Matt, and Jason. It was really great. Thank you.
Yeah.